this session out to the grab alums, but then also the current grab staff.
Oops.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We want to be respectful of time here. I just want to say thank you to you all for your emails, but also I'm sorry, folks, I seem to be getting a little bit of feedback. If you could please mute yourself, that would be appreciated. But yeah, I just want to say thanks for not only the emails, but also completing the Google form to make tonight possible. I think this was an important step in achieving shared communication, and certainly happy to talk with folks one-on-one, but also want to provide this group space. And also wanted to recognize that a majority of the questions that were posed in the Google form for today were really centered around 4 things. The first 2 is what I tried to address in the video presentation. I will do a brief recap of that in tonight's meeting, but really wanted to provide the space to answer these additional 2 questions for tonight. So provide the opportunity for you to ask questions and to share your voice, but also to begin a conversation on how to honor the legacy of GRAB and its founders. So that's our goals for this evening. How it's going to go tonight is really just for me to recap some key highlights from that video presentation. But most of tonight, I want to make sure we spend in this time and virtual space to hear from you. And then I'm joined here by Joe Lynch, who is our Executive Director for Alumni Services. And Joe's going to share an idea to begin the conversation on how to honor the legacy. And just again, to be respectful of your time, we plan to conclude by 8 o'clock tonight. Some things to consider as we go into this conversation. I mean, it's clear to me that when I started at Gettysburg in 2010, the grad program meant a lot to you all. And here in 2021, it's clear that that's the case. That I know you're all very passionate about this organization, and I have deep respect for that and deep respect for this time with you. Our intent is to answer all your questions. That's really the point of today. But if we do run out of time, which we may, I want to make that commitment to reach out to you individually. So if you feel like you have a question that's unanswered or a comment that you still want to make, we can set that up independent of this meeting. When it is time for questions, please feel free to share them in the chat, but also if you want to unmute yourself, there's a lot of folks on the call, so it might give us a few moments to see you, but you can either raise your hand using the Zoom function or just unmute yourself. And again, just to know we are recording this session. So those are just some things to consider as we go into this discussion tonight. So now I want to just share for a few moments a recap of the video presentation, just in case you didn't get a chance to look at that, just so I sort of preface some of the questions here. So on March 9th, I sent the GRAB alumni alias an announcement about the decision that I made to begin to sunset references to both the Office of Experiential Ed and the GRAB name. And let me be clear, this does not mean that the work of outdoor education at Gettysburg is dissolving. I recognize in some of the responses via email that maybe there was some assumptions there, and that is not clear. This is part of a branding refresh that will ideally elevate and raise the work of outdoor education at Gettysburg, and one that I see as necessary as we move forward here at the college. So what is changing? So the reference to those 2 terms will not be used to describe our current work with as part of the student experience. And in fact, we just worked with our current grad staff to identify a different term to describe the student leader role. And that has been decided as outdoor facilitator. Something that's also changing is what I would consider a phenomenal 3-year technical training model will no longer be followed in that same way. That doesn't mean that students won't have access to some of the standard skills of backpacking, kayaking, and rock climbing, but that the standard 3-year cycle that I knew of being core to the grad program would no longer be in service. Our goal is to elevate a service-oriented mission for this work, and what that means is that our outdoor facilitators will be trained and focused on serving the campus community in ways that we hope can increase not just the recognition of our outdoor program, but also meet deeper community needs. We're also recognizing the time that we're in. We want to make sure we have a greater emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think the outdoor medium can provide some phenomenal opportunities there. And our focus will be to enhance the use of outdoor education for leadership development and group development. I know that that's been a part of the program in the past. We want to make sure to enhance that. So what is staying the same? So we want to make sure that experiential learning theory and a lot of the same core components of the philosophy of outdoor education continues. The centerpiece will also be a group of student leaders that will continue to be trained and selected and now paid for their work that I hope will continue the opportunity for students to get into the field and have these valuable experiences. And then also many of the similar programs that have been a part of the college in the past, such as Ascent, groups on the challenge course, trips into the field will continue. And that's certainly a part of the future. And then finally, just some key context of the why. I think one thing that Paul, Denise, Anna, and I have realized that the program of its heyday is unsustainable in the time that we exist today. And I think that's part of a reason why perhaps a name change is warranted there. I think also under the brand of the GLC, I think this sustained commitment and resources can be allocated towards outdoor education that in a time of challenge for this institution, I think can maintain a certain level of sustainability for the program. I also think that under that brand also can provide greater visibility and access. Also, I think this decision was affirmed externally to campus. So Paul, Jess Joswick, and I and Alex Darby, a grad alum, got the chance to go to the Experiential Ed conference up in New Hampshire just before the pandemic. And it was clear to me in all of the conversations that this combination made sense across the industry. And so that was affirming, I think, to see that there's a lot of support for this integration. And we've received a lot of support also from our college partners. So another key reason is around just the intent to move forward. This transition has been quite a challenge. And I don't want to just put that all on COVID and the realities of the pandemic. And I think it's important for my team and for our students to be able to move forward aligned and focused. And I think this decision will help with that. So
do you mind if I ask a quick question?
Yeah, actually. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to unshare my screen and I will open it up for questions here.
So I guess I'm just curious, and this is Brian McGrath, 97 graduate. I'm just curious about the use of the word unsustainable. Are you talking about funding for a outdoors based program and that you need, it's hard for the college to sustain the funding for both Garthwaite and for GRAB? Or are you talking about more so like the program itself, or just the word GRAB in today's sort of climate, or I'm just curious about that use of terminology.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. So what I'm referencing there really is probably your understanding of the grad program of the past, where there was, the 3-year model of in-depth skill training for 3 years that also involved, expeditions across the country. There's, what I admired about, Regenton and many folks on the team is that, the program has been built out over time. And I think when you look at the program in its heyday and all the various things it was able to do, that's really what I mean when I say that that program of the past is unsustainable. And so with our current resources, right? You think of, most recently before the transition, you had, Tucker, Jess, and then Denise as sort of the key folks there. And now working with 2 programs, you have myself, Paul, Anna, and Denise. And so, you think about that staffing reality, that's difficult to be able to achieve all of those programs that were part of the grad program in the past. So I see a question from Brian DeChico. Is that?
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I mean, I had a similar question. I don't really know that Brian McGrath's question of sustainability. I guess I don't. It still just doesn't like click with me. But what that really means. But I also wanted to ask about the that this change was going to help serve the community's needs better. And I really wasn't sure how, like, what was meant by that. Like, I'm not really, I'm not really clear on that. The bullet pointed list of like what was changing or what was some of the problems when the peeking behind the curtain happened. It seems like, if you're looking to increase visibility of the program as a whole, getting rid of a program that should be celebrating its 25th anniversary, and you yourself are sort of putting a lot of compliments on the grad program. It seems to me that the program maybe, needed some tweaking, needed to get back on the right path if the view was that it had sort of gone astray, but sort of the scrapping of it, I just don't see. Like, I'm curious what when you say serving the community's needs better by by this name change, I'm curious what that means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think the part of it is an ethos, Brian. So, I think what I realized over the last couple of years is that the organization was quite insular in nature, and so I think I always saw more potential for the use of the grad staff who are, have been talented student leaders to impact more students. I think we saw a slight decline in the number of students participating in Ascent, for example. And I think by putting more resources into a program like Ascent to get back up to, I mean, John, you could probably tell me what the heyday was there, but I think closer to, 100 or so. I think that's what I mean by service. Be able to invest in programs like that we know has a incredible impact on students, and I think is a very important pipeline for future outdoor facilitators.
So
I think.
I guess my question is there. It seems like we're trapped in some weird circular logic there. That like Ascent was a good program and Grab did a good job running Ascent, and to make Ascent better, we're going to get rid of Grab and we're going to minimize like the training model that Grab leaders go through. And I don't see how that's going to help facilitate more activities and more trips. I mean, it takes a lot to put together Ascent, as most of pretty much everybody on this call is aware of. And you know, Grab offered a variety of different Ascent trips because, you know, we were sort of pulling at a lot of different interests and a lot of different opportunities. And I know you said that you know, there was a plan for Ascent this fall. So I am actually curious where you're at with that planning, because usually at this point in the year, information is going out to prospective students and accepted students for first year Ascent students. So where's that planning right now? Like, how far along are you with that?
You want me to address the question of where Ascent is now?
Sure, you could do that, but then we could also come back to my question about the circular logic of getting rid of Grab to do Ascent better, which was something that you said Grab did a good job with. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so where we are now is there's a group of 4 students who are working with Anna on our project team, and our goal is to launch registration as part of Get Acquainted Day, which will be in about 2 weeks. And you know, I mean, part of it is keeping in mind of we're a little bit unsure about what the fall looks like, but our goal is to you know, register up to 40 students. We think with our current staff, if we're able to get them WFA training and you know, really some more experience in the field, that's been the greatest challenge over the last year. We think we can be able to do that. I think our model we'll be able to maintain the same sort of 5-day experience. So that's where we are now. Back to your other question. You know, it's really about brand confusion. So, you know, I think whenever external audiences hear the term Grab, it's very difficult to understand what that means. And it takes a while to grapple with that. To the fact where I was talking with one of our current seniors, Allison, who's also a tour guide, and I asked her, well, how do you describe it when you're on a tour? And she says, well, actually, I say I'm a staff facilitator. I've just found that that's easier. And so, you know, for me, that was a very eye-opening to think, well, okay, if we're not using the term on admissions, that's certainly an alarm bell there. So also, I think there's always some confusion between when we say the word Grab, do we mean a program? Do we mean a philosophy? Do we mean a group of students, or even an office? I think the Office of Experiential Ed is always done with a slash of Grab and a backslash. And, you know, I think that confusion is something that we've been
Is that a marketing problem? Kind of feels like a marketing problem, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why I think we need to undergo the branding refresh.
Or brand education.
Can I ask a question going back to the needs of the community? Because I just wanted to touch on that a little bit, because when I was on my way out, in which granted was like 2010, so it's been a minute, but we had just been working much more closely with the Center for Public Service to incorporate a lot of like community outreach and different type of environmental, like giving back, picking up trash, going kayaking on trips specifically to talk about like watersheds. If so, we had already started going in that direction. So I'm just wondering, I obviously have not been following the day-to-day of Grab for the last 10 years, but did we move away from working with the Center for Public Service? Are they also getting looped in to the GLC now? Did that focus get lost somewhere along the way?
I'm not sure I could speak to that. I think that's probably more of a question for maybe
I feel
maybe
like
Tucker before. I think the I do know that there was previous ascent trips with CPS, for example, and the GLC. I do know that the colleagues of college life do work collaboratively, even if that's perhaps not seen externally. But yeah, I'm not sure I could answer that.
So
honestly.
is like CPS, are they still like a separate group, or are they also being folded in with GLC? in any way?
No. So the Center for Public Services is yeah, still an independent office. Yeah. I see a couple of hands raised. Drew, I think I see your hand raised.
Yeah, so just going back to this idea of like brand recognition, I work for one of the biggest outdoor education companies in the country, maybe in the whole world, at Knowles. And I often tell people when I'm like, I have to describe it differently to different people based on what audience I'm talking to. If I go to AE, sure, everyone knows what Knowles is. If I'm talking to someone who's on the plane, a grandmother who's like, oh, what do you do? Then maybe I describe that a little bit differently. And I often like use parallel organizations because, for example, Outward Bound is more well-known in the broader public than Knowles is, right? And so I'll say something like that. And like, oh, you know, I often get asked about like, oh, is it like a adjudicated youth program or whatever? And so I would agree with the statement made earlier that it's kind of a marketing issue that you can have an organization that's really has a strong identity and a strong culture that doesn't always get recognized by that name.
Thanks for sharing that, Drew.
I just want to bounce off of Drew's idea, really, or Drew's statement. Were any changes trying to make when these issues arose? Did we try to address them, or did we just decide to sunset the name? Like, how did that process happen?
Yeah, so it was in the summer of 2019 when the GLC sort of became the steward of the outdoor program. And so it's myself, Paul Miller, and Jess Juswick, as class of 14, I believe, and a grab staff member. And our focus was on a process where we could, you know, try to keep all programs intact, and we set out for that year to maintain as many programs as possible. And so, you know, we did Ascent, and we did a version of the WI. We did some Winterfest trips, those sorts of things, some day trips. I think throughout that year, the academic year of 2019-2020, recognizing there was some inconsistent skill levels amongst the grab staff, we knew we needed to focus on, to really prepare for future years. We needed to focus on some backcountry skills. I think that was our focus, particularly for the outdoor education piece. So, you know, I think that was our effort to address some of those issues. I think our goal was to see what are ways that we could, keep aspects of the program going, as well as, maintain the name of Grab. I think it's really been the last 6 months or so, we've recognized that, we really needed to look at a direction that that tries to rebuild the program ultimately. And I think that's, it's really in late December of last year where I started seeking help from our communications and marketing department to think through, okay, how do we talk about all of our programs and all that we do? And through that process, realize that, one piece of this process is going to be a branding refresh. And that's what led us to this moment today.
Andy, I just want to say amazing job with all of us here, all these faces. If I were you, I'd be sweating quite a bit. I'm a sweater as it is, but thanks for doing this. Thanks for setting it up. I do encourage everybody, get your thoughts out in the chat, because I don't know that we'll all be able to share everything we want to share. And Andy, like with every word you say, I'm like, but, and I want to jump in, and I know that's not necessarily fair to you. But when I think about, I can't stop thinking about like a possible identity crisis where we kind of have these contradictory statements where we're hearing that it's not dissolving, but we are going to no longer follow an integral model of the 3-year technical training cycle, or those 5 challenges where we were over budget, but now we're going to pay student wages, or there's a neglect of equipment or insular nature of things, when I'm feeling that I'm feeling like things are more isolated in the last 1.5 to 2 years than I've ever felt before. You know, one of the jokes I wanted to make was when Frenchie, you know, had his couple of emails, I wanted to make the joke, oh, Frenchie probably had HAPE and he was in the hospital when we got the memo of know your audience when you're sending an email, because the things we would learn outdoors and the things that we would take them back to the classroom and to our careers now were always happening. And, you know, why do I know Frenchie, who graduated years and years after me, had HAPE? And, you know, it's because I kept coming back to grab. There were numerous occasions where we were invited, multiple people from multiple parts of the industry, Michelle Cummings, Christine Norton, Bruce Smith. You know, I felt like Grab surrounded itself by many, many people, because Grab wasn't smart enough on its own and didn't have the capacity to do it on its own. So the way that the program was successful and sustainable was to create that capacity through our very own Gary here. You know, and I was in the room, Andy, with one of those calls that you had with Gary, and I just felt like Gary wasn't being utilized. So my thought is, how can we get back to, you know, it's a shame if our name changes, but when we start hearing that we're not changing the philosophy, but we are changing the philosophy, I'm on my toes, and I'm very nervous, and I'm hearing these like kind of jagged messages that really put me on edge. And I want to point out too, we're a really young community here. It's been great to kind of tighten up with everybody again. It felt like just, you know, yesterday seeing Jess Grant after not seeing her for years. It's a pretty neat community. And Andy, I don't know that we're gonna be making millions of dollars here, but I think I'm one of the older grads. I'm only 44 years old. I got a lot of earning potential ahead of me. So I don't want you to lose this great group of folks, which, you know, we're 70 and counting just on this call. And we're really mission oriented, and we're really passionate. And I just hope that gets through and we can keep having this conversation. I don't think it's right or fair to jump to, you know, how we can honor the legacy of Grab or John Reggington or Gary. I think we need to really talk through how this is going to go and how we can be a better part of it, and what we've done as leaders. How can we debrief around, Andy? How could we have been better? What could we do more to help you continue this legacy and not burying the name? Sure, that would be sad, but burying the legacy and the philosophy and what got us to all where we are today, I think, is what is most disconcerting.
Hey, Sully, I'd love to tap in as a guy who was through this in 2019. I have a few points I wrote down just in sort of reflection on what was a challenging, tumultuous, and frankly backhanded process. Andy, I'd like to start and just ask, when we say for the future of the program, I'm kind of wondering where we're coming from there, because we stripped the hiring process when you specifically told us fall of 2019 that would not change. We started hiring differently, which started cutting the community and the training. And then we talk about outdoor facilitators. Are you hiring them directly like we used to, or are you giving them the whole year process so they don't really know where they are, they don't know where they fit, and they don't have that community that we all have here on this call, that we all said so many times made this program so influential on all of us is now gone. Through things like this, you've eliminated a 3-year training cycle and eliminated WI, and have essentially stripped grab of everything that made it unique. You know, the GLC is noted as a distinctive program. Grab was a distinctive program. It didn't need the notation. It drew people in and it kept people in. I'm really hurt by a lot of the things you said in this email because they were half-truths or backhanded. You talk about flexibility, and there were 3 signs outside the grab office. I read them every time I went in. It was professionalism, versatility, and poise. Well, there have been a ton of trips where I've had to change what I was doing. I've been versatile, but I'm confused as to how you said that we were, and I quote, "The folks of adaptability and flexibility, we encountered strong resistance there and expected us to be flexible when you were stripping the community from our program and you were stripping distinctive and important aspects from grab." I'm sincerely hurt by the way this went down, and I feel as if people have been led astray and led to believe there's something to hold on to when you stripped so much of what grab was. The name was the last thing to take, and I feel like you've taken everything from us. I feel like you've taken my community and you took the last year of my college career, and frankly, through the backroom meetings, through everything you did to almost pit us against each other, it was terrible. It was a hell to live through. What had been my sanctuary and what had been my safe space became a space that was really tough to go to because I was living in ruin. I was living in what had been. And I know I talked to current staff. I've met my girlfriend of 4 years. She currently works on the staff. And, you know, it's really tough for people there to complain when, you know, some of these people want to go into outdoor education. How are they to push back? How are they continue to fight for the things we love when they have recommendations held over their head? And I apologize for going on, everyone. I really do. I just wrote down a few things and I needed to say them. Oh man. And then we said keep the flame alive. I just want to say, what flame were you keeping alive? Because I feel as if you've taken everything from this program and left it. I mean, you've left us all here sad, and frankly, you've left me empty. So, you know, it's great to see everyone. Love grab, giddy up. And if you're ever in Denver, please don't hesitate to come by.
I see a hand raised from Mark.
Yeah, I don't think I could have said it better. So I think it's, you know, I'll speak from my perspective. It's a little disappointing to hear this sort of at this state. So do appreciate you doing this, but I think there's a lot more information that could have been shared. Thank you.
Yeah, Andy, it would be great to get a response from you for what Connor just said, or to hear, you know, how you might respond to some of the feelings that people are having.
Sorry, who said that?
That was me, Leslie.
Oh, hey, Leslie.
Yeah, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think Connor just said a lot, and I feel like you're hearing a lot of discomfort from various people, and I realize that's hard to respond to in the moment, but it would be nice to just get some acknowledge, like Connor, I heard you acknowledge your experience, and I think that that's an important part of this discussion and this process. So I just kind of wanted to ask you to respond to what you're hearing.
This is it. Yes. Go, Andrew. We can't wait to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think Connor's passion speaks to the love of the experience. I mean, there's no question about that. I'm not sure what needs to be said there. I think from my point of view, from the beginning of working, you know, with the students in that 2019, I experienced that resistance to change. You know, I know myself personally, and even Paul Mellon never felt as part of the group, you know, and I know we're not necessarily grab staff members, but to be people who here, you know, had a desire to, you know, ensure that outdoor education continues. I think that was certainly my experience there. But I think I think from my point of view, that resistance to change is what I experienced. And yeah, I think it certainly, you know, to hear Connor your experience in your senior year, yeah, I can certainly understand that was a tumultuous time, and yeah, I think that's something that I wish it had gone differently. I do. I wish there could have been a greater sense of connection and collaboration. And you know, if there's something that I said or did in those moments that you know didn't contribute to this idea that we were sincere in ensuring that the program of outdoor education continues, then you know, I'm sorry for that.
Thanks, Andy. And we want you to be part of GRAB and GRAB staff. So I just want to say that as well, that there's no intention, I'll speak for myself, I think for most of the group, to be exclusive or excluding. So I just want to say that too. I appreciate hearing from you. So thank you.
Of course. Gary, I see your hand up there.
You're on mute, Gary. There you go.
There we go. I have two process questions, Andy. We're having this meeting now in April. In terms of inclusion and engagement, why weren't the multitude of constituent groups that have been influenced by GRAB, community groups, student groups, assent groups, professionals, governmental groups? There's a whole, and of course, all my fine friends here that I'm looking at and that I haven't seen for a while, all of these folks, in terms of inclusion engagement, why weren't they involved in this process at the get-go such that we got to this point? So that's question one. The other is the peek behind the curtain. I have to say that one just bothers me immensely from an administrative and organizational development perspective. And I asked you back, I want to say in January, February last year, when you found that the equipment wasn't just right, or they were over budget, or the things that you put in your slide. And I asked you point blank, who was Tucker's supervisor? Who should have been not peeking behind the curtain, but doing those 360 evaluations that GRAB was always shooting for? You know, you get a lot of perspectives on how you're behaving and how you're performing. How was that program just left within the administration such that you had to take a peek behind the curtain and find things that were just not right? That just totally blows me away, Andy. I don't get it. So those are the two things I want to know. Why weren't folks included from the get-go? And who was Tucker reporting to such that after 3 years, you had to take a peek behind the curtain?
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, I think around your first question, I definitely think we should have engaged this community in more of a proactive way. I think we had attempted to ensure there was a level of communication. So I think since Paul and I took over, we've sent about 4 or 5 emails over the last 18 months to the GRAB alumni alias, and you know, I know that is not as proactive as we should have been. I think we did hear from a handful of folks from those emails, and probably could have been more proactive about engaging that. I think yeah, looking back now, I think we should have done that. I think to your second question, I find myself a little bit strange answering that question, Gary, since I was sort of on the periphery, but our vice president and dean of students at the time, as well as one of our associate deans, were supervising Tucker, from what I understand. And I think in my obviously intent versus impact here, my intent behind the curtain is that I think there was certainly I think there was certainly some knowledge from sort of externally. You can see sort of some things on the surface happening, but then when you become an administrator, when you get to see the transactions, you see really things underneath the surface. That's what I was trying to convey. So I apologize for that language. Okay, I see a couple more hands here. Laurie.
Actually, I think there are a bunch of people before me, so I'm going to pass it off to Tova or somebody else who had their hand up first.
I think I was probably later too, but yeah, I think Greer probably had his up before me. I don't know. This could go on forever. Yeah, Greer, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, Justin Greer, class of 2004. Andy, what I'd like to see addressed is how you plan to make this program sustainable with your new training model. I'm a firefighter paramedic by profession. It's a job that's built on training. And I just don't see how, with gutting the training aspect of GRAB, you're going to be able to sustainably run a program.
Sorry, let me be clear. We're certainly not gutting the training aspect. There will still continue to be training. I think our focus will be on backpacking skills. I think it's so important that we solidify those foundational backpacking skills with our students, and then really build from there. I think at this point we couldn't commit to doing 3 skill sets in a 3-year period. So I think let me be clear that there is going to be high quality training that just focuses on that particular skill set.
I'll go back after Greer. So I think that's a good segue into my question. And basically, I'm Tova. I'm class of 06. I had to think about that for a sec. So one of the biggest from had to do with the backcountry. We were in a conference room with Kat's father, and he was teaching us about how to facilitate a conversation. And I've used that skill. I work at Fidelity. None of the people that I work with will probably ever be in the backcountry, but I use that skill all the time. And so I think my question to you is, it doesn't take an insane Wilderness Institute trip to learn to teach the people that was one of my biggest takeaways. And so, what the goals and the essence of GRAB do not require a ton of funding. It requires the desire and the mission, and to have a very clear set of goals of what you want to get out of the program. And so my question to you is, continuing this, making this live through, what are your goals and your fundamentals for the program? Because again, the fundamentals that I got from GRAB were in a conference room. Could happen anywhere. So I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah, if I could address that too, because I think that's a really important point. So facilitation is a core set of skills that absolutely is the foundation of a good outdoor leader or outdoor facilitator. I think one sort of testament to that point that we wanted to make sure we continued even in the pandemic. So in the fall semester where we had, poor Bailey was the only grad staff member who was allowed on campus. We ran what's called the Group Facilitation Fellowship. So recognizing that we didn't have Ascent to really recruit and identify future leaders, we knew we needed to do something to make sure that we could find the students who would be interested in this. So we ran a fellowship where we were able to allocate funding to be able to provide a stipend for these students, but also during the pandemic to also give them backcountry skills where they were able to get into the field. And we had 14 students that participated in that. And I think at least half of them are going to apply or have applied. Actually, the application's due tonight for the outdoor facilitator role. And yeah, what was so important about that is we knew we needed for students to come into the program and then be ready for Ascent. They couldn't just start in April, right? So I think that was our idea to sort of begin that particular facilitation training. So yeah, I agree with that. Okay, so I see, Laurie, do we want to go to you?
Sure. So I think I want to talk a little bit about adversity and vulnerability. And, in the world that we live in right now, both we're facing adversity and it requires a lot of vulnerability to support the people around you in surviving this whole pandemic thing. I work at a boarding school and we've been in lockdown for basically 2 weeks because of COVID. And I find myself drawing on all of the lessons that I learned in the backcountry about expedition behavior and seeing where people are, checking in, debriefing with my co-dorm parent about how people are doing. And that happens, in my job and in my family and pretty much in any context that you put yourself in. The ability to see people, understand where they are, know how to communicate with them, and share lessons that you learned deeply because you were in a really tough position on Wilderness Institute where, maybe you were a little bit hypothermic and you don't do well at elevation and you got snappy and you learned how to move through that. And what I don't understand here is the idea of it not being sustainable doesn't make sense to me because the programs that we ran paid for the trips that we went on, or we paid for the trips that we went on. And to me, the skills that I learned, the hard skills were great, but it was the soft skills that were so transferable. But where can you learn them faster, And I just am worried about Gettysburg and worried about letting go of something that's so unique to Gettysburg. And I don't see why it can't continue to exist in the same capacity beneath the GLC as its own sort of branch. Like lumping it all together doesn't quite fit well.
Thank you for sharing that, Laurie. Yeah, and I think the student leader group that is working on outdoor education will continue. So yeah, I think it certainly is under the umbrella of the GLC, but that core essence of peer educators will continue. I do see a couple more hands raised, Nick and Thomas and Caitlin. So let's do Nick first.
Hi, Nick, class of 2011. I do appreciate you doing this. One question I had after reading the slides and listening to your presentation is resistant to change. What change? Because resistance isn't always a bad thing. I think it depends. I could totally understand someone being resistant to, taking away core aspects of the program like climbing and kayaking. Yes, many important skills can be learned on backpacking trips. And I facilitated some excellent backpacking trips, and people learned a lot. But I think it's important that the level of challenge be matched. And I saw students learn so much on climbing trips and really challenge themselves. And if the challenge level is appropriate and the skills are there, I think losing climbing from the program or kayaking, it'd be a huge loss. And I think if you're trying to bring more students in, and get them more involved in outdoor education in the program, if you're just doing backpacking trips, that's just going to lead to, I think, the program continuing to decline. And I think it's okay to say, the program did atrophy, some institutional knowledge was lost, but really that's taking a look at how the program got to that point and what you can do to fix it. It's not, let's absorb it, let's take everything away, and then continue to point to failings of the program. Right. The reality is some of these changes should have been implemented sooner, and people who have that institutional knowledge should have been brought in and contacted. So I would like a little more information about what change that GRAB was resistant to from your perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole idea of collaborating with the GLC was a change, and that we saw some resistance. So I think that just in general, that was a key aspect. I think also just different personnel. I think that we felt some resistance to change there.
So Andy, you also are saying right now collaborate, but it seems like actually what happened was that the program was absorbed by GLC. Is that right? Is that correct language?
Well, I mean, I think technically you could say that, yes, true, right? So the Office of Experiential Education, which was the department that oversees GRAB, was folded at least through our staff lines, right, under the GLC. Yeah, that was something that happened immediately, I think.
Yeah, and so if you were absorbed into the Office of Experiential Education, do you think that you would have experienced any sort of resistance to that change as well?
Yeah, I could certainly see that there would be some resistance there. Yeah, but
then by that logic, Andy, would you agree that if you resisted the change to be part of the Office of Experiential Education, that the GLC should then get disbanded and thrown away, sort of the way you're proposing GRAB is? I feel like you're using a circular logic that they were resistant to us getting rid of them, so that's why we need to get rid of them. Like that, I just don't see how that is a model of good leadership, because what we're hearing from the recent alumni and what we're hearing from the current staff does not sound like good leadership. It doesn't sound like it's honest communication. Like what's happening right here, this is how GRAB worked. We would put our emotions out there. We would be open and honest with people, and we'd have tough conversations, and a lot of learning and a lot of growth came from that. And this process just doesn't seem to have incorporated any of that. And I apologize for I know there are other people, I didn't mean to jump in here, but this whole process just really feels disingenuous to me.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for sharing that, Brian. I'll probably have time for one more question, and what I'd encourage folks to do who still have questions is just to reach out to me individually. I'd be happy to connect with you then. Joe, I'm going to say to you, let's connect with folks independently of this meeting about our second agenda. But Thomas, I know you've had your hand up. Let me at least provide that space for you.
Yeah, I'm Thomas Jelke, sorry. Class of 2020, I just graduated last year. So I was in the same staff class as Connor. So I was part of the integration experience. And I just think it's just, like unable to adhere to some authority, when I think, just like Connor articulated, key aspects of our program that made it valuable were being kind of stripped away from us. We lost the ability to hire a staff class. We lost the ability to have mentor-mentee relationships. We lost the ability to host international expeditions. And then we were in the process of removing rock climbing because, in 3 years of training, it was perfectly adequate and there was no issue with the administration. And then all of a sudden, as a senior, we're being told that we're not up to some imagined industry standard that, no one can articulate or put on paper. I just think, I understand, the idea that not everyone on staff was at the same level of skill, but to just kind of make up this arbitrary industry standard and say none of us have met it. And so for that reason, we can't do key elements of the program like rock climbing. Look, that's the program that got me on Ascent. That's the program that, really, kept me loving Grab. I wasn't much of a climber as a senior, but, getting to, have someone and to facilitate that experience for someone else was so valuable to me. And I'm sure to so many others here, to provide that environment to, accomplish things that never thought possible. And it just felt like, that just swept under some rug, and everything was kind of just thrown out the window, and we weren't allowed to do or say anything. And any kind of disagreement we had, it was our fault or we did something wrong. And it just seemed like our program was inadequate all of a sudden. For 3 years I existed in that program without issue, and now all of a sudden, because you have to pay us, there's not enough money for the program and we're underfunded. I just didn't understand a lot of the issues that you found with the program and how they all of a sudden manifested in, a matter of a few months in my senior year.
I just jump in here. I'm sorry, I can't hold my tongue any longer. So having been initially just John and I, before Grab was a thing, the soft skills, the basic, principles of what Grab existed with very, very little funding. And quite frankly, listening to what's being said here, I think it's a lot more than just money that you're talking about, because when you talk about the sustainability and things like that, there are plenty of people that would be willing, on this call to come in and help out with that. And nobody has reached out and asked for help. And this is where, I just got to say, there's a major disconnect here with what we are being told and what's really going on. And until you figure out that it's the philosophy of the program and the way the program is run, the debriefing, the soft skills, as everybody's saying, until we figure that out, that is the heart of what Grab is. And along with that comes the basic outdoor skills that go along with it. I mean, you want to talk about the first institute where we had very basic skills, but that is, you can't tell me you can't go rock climbing, because if we could go rock climbing in 96 it was, then you can go rock climbing now and find somebody that can do it. Trust me.
Thank you, Jessica. Well, I apologize, but we are at time, and I want to be respectful of that. Thank you all for tuning in and your questions. And I would encourage you to certainly connect with me individually to discuss any particular questions. And then, I don't see this as the end of the conversation. I think it's important that we keep the dialogue open. So, I think the next stage is to hear from you individually, any questions that we didn't get through. And then, I want to
Andy, I think we have a lot of questions on the chat that maybe we can keep the conversation going as a group via email. If you can take a look at that chat and maybe respond that way, and we can kind of figure out, just because there's so many of us, I don't know that one-on-ones are going to be I mean, fruitful for you. And I think we as a group would like to make sure we're all being kept in the loop on what's going on. So I certainly open, maybe via email, we can figure out what those next steps are. And I know, Andy, you got the punching bag today a little bit, but we can't say enough how we appreciate you kind of coming to the table like this. And would love to keep talking. If we have to talk to other folks too, if it makes sense to talk to your superiors, to anybody else at the college that you think we should. I think, you know, I don't want to speak on behalf of everybody, but we're game to try to help this program stick and keep those philosophies, and how can we help you do that? And kind of, I know you've seen some questionable things over the last couple of years. I think that's what, you know, is part of this. And I think if we can get the right leadership in there, we can get it back to where it was. Not going backwards, but get it to that successful, sustainable program that it was in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you saying that, Sully. Yeah, I think I'll need to think more on, you know, the best way to engage the group. You know, I think I'm not sure the email chain is probably the most effective. So let me think about that. I'll certainly commit to coming up with a strategy that can engage the group in a way that is useful for us all. But thank you all very much for calling in. Really appreciate your time, and wish you a good evening.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. So great to see all your faces.